The next wave, as always, brought to you by Betano. The game starts now at betano.ca. A little bit of a tighter squeeze because Stephen Ellis is sliding in to the studio here.
What's going on here?
No, it's just look, it's tight. We're very shoulder to shoulder. Jeez, Frank. Stephen, let's start with your mock draft. New one, the final one, up now at dailyfaceoff.com. And the big question, Bedard 1, Carlson 2, Fantilli 2, Carlson 3. You have Michkov going 4 to the Sharks. Explain.
So Michkov to the Sharks makes the most sense to me because, Mike Greer started, he's new last year to the team. He's kind of in this rebuilding mode. And this is a guy that by the maybe competitive, Michkov will be ready to go. We're obviously waiting 3 years for him. A lot of prospects outside of maybe the top 5 in most years take 2 to 3 years. So It's not like this huge wait like some people are kind of making out to be. It'd be interesting to see, though, if other teams go out there and try to make a move. Washington Capitals have been a team that's been linked to them for sure. And part of that's the Russian factor. Could the Flyers make a move? If he doesn't go to San Jose, does Montreal pick him? I think just for long-term future, it makes sense for him to go to San Jose. Mm-hmm. But, they could also go the Will Smith route, which would make a lot of sense to me. You get that number 1 center you need.
So before we move off of Michkov, I want to just point out, mentioned on the DFO rundown earlier today with Jason Gregor, that there was some speculation heading into the weekend that the Flyers are one of the teams that's interested in Michkov. Now, not only do I think that's accurate, but I do have reason to believe that part of the push for the Flyers to make the moves, whether it's Hayes or whoever it might be, to get them into the first round, Sanheim, Lawton, Konechny, they want to take whatever they can get and cobble that together, I think, in a package to try and attempt to move up from 7 to the 4 or 5 range to guarantee that they could try and get Michkov. Now, that's not set in stone. No idea how the draft board is going to play out. And I personally don't think the Sharks have any interest in moving number 4. But just something to keep an eye on as we get closer to draft night, that if you see the Flyers accumulate additional first-round picks, that could be part of their motivation, is to try and get their hands on a player that, for a team that's just beginning its rebuild, the timing might actually be perfect to finally get him into their lineup in 2026. So moving on with your mock draft, Stephen, you have Zach Benson outside of the top 10, and you have him going at number 12. Is that a play in your mind if Benson continues to fall down the board on draft night?
Yeah, I have him as being, I think, number 6 in my prospect rankings. And I just think the skill is there, very elite. I hate using the word elite, but in terms of a shot, in terms of the way he generates offense, he could do it all. But he's 5'9", and we typically see guys that are 5'9" fall down in the rankings, and that's a really tough situation there. So I have him going to Arizona, which would be a huge pickup for them. I think they're going to continue to load up here. I have Arizona picking Dalibor Dvorsky with their first pick, and that's someone who just brings that work ethic. And if you have Logan Cooley and Dvorsky as your 1-2 center punch, that's going to be really dangerous down the line. But then you also throw in a guy like Zach Benson, who could generate a lot of that offense, who can be that play driver. That's something where that'd be great. So that is a value pick for me. I think he should go top 10. Just from a lot of conversations, I think I'm alone there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think part of the reason why it's been a little bit slow getting to this point in terms of trades and transactions, Stephen, is a lot of people might see some of this wait until actually on the floor itself because they're so curious to see how the draft board unfolds. So as you get later in that first round, who's one guy that you think could be very interesting taken late in round 1 on Wednesday night?
So the one that I'd be looking for is Etienne Morin, who plays in the QMJHL, and I have him going to Toronto with that pick. Now, the question is, will Toronto keep that pick? I kind of go into the assumption every year that Toronto will trade that first-round pick. But with him, it's a guy that Dan Marr, the director of NHL Central Scouting, went out and said that that's the guy that he think would be the first defenseman picked if he had his way. And, just part of it is just the way he sees the game. And when you look at these young guys, there's a lot of defensemen who can score, a lot of defensemen who can, hit. But there's not a lot of guys who actually are super strong defensively in their own zone. With him, you do get that. Morin is very good in his own zone. He's about as good of a passer as you'll get, very good hockey IQ. He just thinks the game ahead of everyone else. So, I'm not necessarily convinced that he's going to be this super great prospect yet, but it just, from conversations I've had, there's a lot to think there's still some untapped potential for him to have this huge year in the QMJHL and be this top.
So what you're saying is you think that there's the chance for Morin to be this year's version of Lane Hudson?
I can see that. I can see
Okay.
that.
I mean, let's remind everyone how bold of a prediction that is, or at least conjecture from Dan Marr saying David Reinbacher, Sandin Pellikka, Tom Willander. Like, there's a whole bunch of defensemen in this draft that you watch, specifically those two Swedes continue to rise up the rankings. That to say Morin would be the first guy he takes is a pretty big deal.
That one kind of surprised everybody at the draft combine. I will want to say, though, I had Lane Hudson at number 10 last year. I was very confident in him, so I'm happy it worked out.
And he went 62 to the Montreal Canadiens.
Our pal Bera in the YouTube chat wanted to know who will be this year's Moritz Seider. Maybe a surprising D-man who could slide up the boards.
That would probably be Morin.
Yeah.
Although I did have Seider as a top 6 pick that year.
Really?
I was very high on him. It's a guy that played a lot. Or didn't play a lot, in Germany. But when he played, his numbers looked really good. So I'd say the closest stylistically, though, is David Reinbacher.
So, by the way, to point out, Mo Seider going to Detroit, I remember being in the draft that year and hearing the audible gasps of, where'd this guy come from? No one had him going this high. Keep an eye beside you. Keep an eye on the Detroit Red Wings again. Steve Yzerman not afraid to go off the board and get the guy that he really likes.
Yeah.
And they're picking at 9.
Last one I got for you, Steven, is the goalie question. We floated this to you a couple times over the last month. Our friends at Patano have the line set at half for goalies taken. Over or under half a goalie taken. What's your pick there?
Well, I think 1 at this point. And Frank was one that kind of brought it up. There could be multiple here. I'm going with San Jose specifically picking Michael Rabbi. And that one's interesting because they do pick early in the second round. And they'll probably have a goalie available. But if the pressure is on to pick up a guy, and this guy is the best goalie in this year's draft for Rabbi, you go for him. A guy who is listed as 6'6" somewhere, 6'7" other places. A goalie that I think has all the raw talent to be a very strong goalie. I think the biggest issue is the way he kind of covers the bottom of the net, which you do see from time to time. But I think that he'll be the goalie drafted for sure. I also do want to mention, I want to say this at the start, about the sad news about Alex Graham, the prospect out in Great Britain. He was one of the top young guys there, and sad to see him pass away at 20.
And we just want to point out with Rabel too, if he does go in the first round, you mentioned the frame, 6'6", 6'7", but also the idea that he's a Czech guy that's going to be playing at UMass next year really helps. Teams are intrigued about the idea of getting not their hands on him, but having closer touch to a goalie in their organization.
Interesting stuff, as always, Mr. Ellis. We are about, 48, 72 hours away from round 1 of the NHL draft. I shouldn't be trying to count that quickly on the air, but appreciate your insight. Look forward to all of your articles and work coming up at dailyfaceoff.com.
I can't wait. This is Christmas.
Check out the Daily Faceoff Draft Hub. Go to dailyfaceoff.com. Right on the menu bar there, Draft Hub, all of Steven's work from the past 6 months, including more than 30 player prospect profiles. Amazing work by Steven. No one watches more hockey. I'm telling you, I bet you Steven watches more hockey than 95% of front office members in the NHL. And I'm not exaggerating.
And it all comes down to this week. Look forward to your work. Thanks, Steven.